Hello and welcome back to my channel, and this time we're going to be running through everything behind me and what I use for my live setup. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with me and my music, I'm a member of a band called Lockdown Company, which started out as a hard rock instrumental group and has now grown and evolved to being a more conventional rock band with vocals that ventures into blues, metal, progressive territory. So in this video, I'm going to be going through what my live rig is specifically and how over time I've been able to build a rig which is versatile enough to do the music that I need it to do within Lockdown Company, but is also reliable enough and practical enough to take on stage and use in countless rehearsal sessions. So we'll start with the guitars, and in the studio I use either my SG, my Strat, or my two PRSs. But playing live, I need something that does that hard rock thing better than anything else, but also has the tonal versatility needed to replicate what I do in the studio. And that's where the PRSs come in. So I have the Custom 24 and I have the McCarthy Standard. And both guitars are really at home with heavier styles of music. They're actually synonymous with metal players and those that play those more progressive genres. But I find that they have that tonal versatility needed for something like the band that I play in live. But more than anything, they're super stable and super reliable. And I find when playing live, the best attribute that a guitar can have is if you can rely on it. And actually those practical reasons for using a guitar on stage kind of outweigh the tonal ones. The next thing I'm going to talk through is the amplifier. So I use a Victory V40, the Duchess. It's a single channel amp with a channel volume and a master volume, 3-band EQ, inbuilt digital reverb, and numerous other features which I'll come on to in a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a sweep of my settings and why I set it up that way. It's a single channel amp, but you've actually got a high and a low power setting. I always have it on the high setting when I'm playing live. This is for maximum headroom. The low setting being low power, it's lower volume, but it gets crunchier at those lower volumes as well. And actually I find it's slightly darker. Anything that's kind of above 10 o'clock with this, you get the power stage cooking. When I'm using it in the rehearsal studios or playing on stage, this is really just dialing the output volume of the amplifier. It's got an inbuilt digital reverb, which I do use. I keep it quite low in the mix, usually just fractionally above 9 o'clock. And then we'll come on to the 3-band EQ. So I'm pushing the treble a little bit more because I find that particularly with the PRS guitars, you need to have a little bit more high end dialed in. The middle I usually have directly at 12. It's dialed in really nicely, the mid-range in this amp, and actually complements the PRS mid-range quite nicely. And then the bass I cut down, particularly if I have the master cranked a little bit more. Got to be really careful about the low end that it just doesn't get really flubby and out of control. There is a mid kick in this amp, which is actually really subtle. I don't use it with my two PRS guitars because I can find that that will just be too focused in the mid-range. And then you've got a voice 1 and a voice 2 switch. Victory described voice 1 as more vintage inspired, voice 2 is a little bit more modern inspired. What I find is voice 1 is slightly more open across the EQ range, voice 2 is slightly more focused in the mids. And then this is the channel volume, which is actually really important. Yes, this is described as a clean platform amp, but this can get really crunchy. And I'll play through that in a second of how that sounds when you dial up the preamp volume. And as you can see, I have this dialed in quite high because I like to get the amp cooking and I like to get gain from the amp that I can really push into the front end with some boost pedals and some drive pedals. So now I'm going to take you through the pedalboard section of the rig and each of the pedals and why they're there and kind of how they interact with each other. It's worth noting that the pedalboard is going through a constant evolution and probably will go through an upgrade next year. So this is just where I've gotten to up until this point, which has taken 3 or 4 years of refinement. So you'll be able to hear the tones of each of these pedals in the playthrough, but I'm going to start from right to left as the signal chain goes through the board. Now when I built this iteration of the board, I've kind of divided it into pre-drive section, drive section, modulation, spatial effects. So the first thing in the chain is the Exotic Effects XP1 wah pedal. The reason I use this is because it's fully adjustable with some settings on the right, and it's a true bypass pedal. Then it comes to insert, controversial statement here, the most important pedal on the board, which is the Boss TU2 tuner. Absolutely indestructible pedal, and it's actually brilliant visually when you're on stage and need to see whether you're in tune or not. Then we come onto the Torpedo effects, the Dane. This is probably the only always-on pedal on the board. It's got a boost side and a drive side, and whilst it may be considered lower gain, when you crank it you get some brilliant hard rock tones. Please excuse the reflection in this particular pedal. Then we come on to the Way Huge Conspiracy Theory, which is a clon type pedal, and I was previously running a tube screamer, but I just found this clon type just complemented the PRSs a lot more. This is used specifically to really kick in extra high gain tones. As you can see, I'm running the output really high, but also I'm running the gain at 12 o'clock. So then we've got the modulations, we've got the Boss Dimension C. This is a chorus type pedal that I just prefer the sound of. You can subtly tweak the tones. I've got it in standard mode with dip switches 2 and 4 engaged. Then we've got the Script Phase 90. This is the oldest pedal, or the pedal that I've owned for the longest period of time. Really warm phase tone that is used in very specific sections of certain songs. But I just love the way that this pedal sounds. Then the spatial effects, the Jam Pedals Delay Llama is an analog delay. This is used not just for ambient sections, but I'll use it for sort of high gain solos as well. And then we've got the Walrus Audio Slow, which is the latest addition to the board. This is used for very specific intros and ambient breakdowns because it is that kind of ambient shoegazer style reverb pedal. And it's worth noting that everything on this board at the moment is going into the front of the amp, although the next iteration I'm probably going to run these spatial effects through the loop. The only other thing that I'll add to this video, which isn't technically part of the live rig, it's technically part of the recording setup, but everything you hear in my videos is recorded using the Torpedo Captor X. It's a phenomenal piece of gear and I couldn't recommend it more for anyone who's doing sort of home recording setups. The cab that I'm using is a Victory cab download pack. This is a 4x12. The reason that I use this is actually because we play through a 4x12 cab when I rehearse live, and invariably when I play live using my Victory cab, this is as close as it gets to the live sound. there you go, there's a run through of different tones that I get from this particular rig. It's versatile enough for what I need it for. The different pedal combinations mean that you can go from really clean bluesy lead solos all the way through to kind of searing hard rock riffage. It's really enjoyable to play with. It gives me that versatility, but it also gives me the ability to kind of experiment when I'm playing live. Yes, there are certain pedals and certain combinations that I use for particular moments in certain songs, but I still have the freedom to be able to kick on a drive pedal if I feel like it, kick on the wah if I feel like it. In short, it's really fun to play with, but also it's not too complicated. You know, I can have fun with it, I can be spontaneous with it, and if something goes wrong or if a pedal goes down or a patch cable goes down, I can really easily fix it. I've been using this current rig and setup for a few months now and gigged with it on a number of different occasions. So again, apologies for the poor recording quality, but hopefully you can get a sense of the rig and how I use it live. For sitting through this video. I hope you found it either informative or entertaining. I'd love to get your thoughts on my current rig, where you think there could be improvements, where you think perhaps I need a new pedal, perhaps I should get rid of all my pedals entirely. So comment below your thoughts, subscribe, and until next time, I'll catch you later.